to the Western Cape, where the IEC will be giving its final update on the 2021 municipal elections results. eNCA's Lindsay Dentlinger joins me now from the Rock in Cape Town with more details. And Lindsay, I believe you are joined by Brett Heron of the Good Party. He doesn't seem to be on track to become mayor at this rate.
Unfortunately, we've just lost Brett Heron to us, but yes, he was standing as the mayoral candidate, and his party right now sitting in about third position, looking to return to the Cape Town Metro, of course, this time under the Good banner. Brett Heron was a former MACO member in this council, and they are really the party to watch. Following on from what Yan and you were just discussing earlier, that splintering of the coloured vote, and we're starting to see that now in the numbers. Things a little bit slow here in terms of capturing those final wards here in Cape Town. We're at about 72% now of the results captured, but certainly neck and neck right now. The two newcomers, Patricia de Lille's Good Party and the Cape Coloured Congress, formed from a movement here in Cape Town, morphing into a political party, and they are really the two that have seen votes possibly being taken away from the DA and being shared among these two parties, and they are now really going neck and neck with just about under 5% each of the vote here in the city of Cape Town, looking to make inroads into the opposition benches, where I must say, and again following on from what Yan was saying, the ANC's performance, especially in the city of Cape Town, absolutely pitiful, barely at 13% right now. So, it now appears that the city and certainly this province now all but lost to the ANC. To us.
What's the story, Lindsay, of the DA's performance in the city of Cape Town and other municipalities that it controlled in the Western Cape? We've been talking about the two big political parties being in reverse gear, but they are holding on to some of the municipalities that they ran. For instance, here in Gauteng, Midvaal, there was no contest there. It was all DA. But I imagine that they should be worried about, some of the municipalities where they held on, but the performance is slightly lower than what it was. Is that the story in many of the municipalities in the Western Cape?
Yes, you're summing it up. The DA is holding on fairly well here in Cape Town, over 60% of the vote right now. Of course, that's off the mark from the two-thirds majority they've been working up towards over the last 15 years. But overall, the province as a whole, all those municipalities, this performance by the DA, even though they're holding on to us, no outright majorities. Very few councils are they holding on to with an outright majority, and certainly the performance, when you look at it across the province, this kind of performance not seen since before 2006. So all that work they've done over the last 15 years certainly not coming to fruition at the polls right now. We should point out voter turnout said to be only around 50%. So we also have to judge their performance in that context. But in most of the places where they are taking the lead, it's only in the 40%. So no outright win for them. 14 hung councils out of 25 in this province, Tulas. That's a lot. And we're going to see parties like the Good Party, particularly in George, where they did fairly well, in Saldanha, in Theewaterskloof, places like that, where even though the DA is in the lead right now, should the Good Party decide to get into bed with the ANC or any of the other parties, they could push the DA right out, even though the DA is currently in the lead in those municipalities, because, Tulas, they have just not gotten the support they have in previous years, and so they're not holding on with a strong majority. And that certainly must be really problematic for the party as they look through those results this morning, Tulas.
All right, Lindsay Dentlinger, thank you for that update, joining us there from Cape Town. The next time we hear from you, my understanding is that it will be a wrap-up of operations by the IEC, at least from the Provincial Results Operating Centre, from one rock to another rock, the National Rock. The Independent Electoral Commission had ambitious plans to count 90% of votes by last night. That didn't materialize, but by 8 a.m. this morning, that number is now approaching 70%. For an update on the results, Masego Ratlaga is standing by at the National Results Operating Centre. That's in Pretoria. So, Masego, we just heard from the Provincial Results Operating Centre in KZN. I imagine that what happened with them must have had a trickle effect, a trickle-down effect, and an effect on the ability of the IEC to keep the promise of having 90% of the results out by last night. How are things looking today?
Tilasiso, to be honest with you, we're not seeing the promises made in terms of the number of votes that would be, or the counting of votes that would be completed by today. We were, of course, told that it would be 90% by last night, but my colleague, or our colleague, Gareth Edwards, did speak to the CEO of the IEC this morning, Sai Mamabolo, and he explained that, there's a few glitches that they needed to get over first, and that there will definitely be conclusion when it comes to that. But we also heard Tilasiso from the HSRC, and they were giving us basically their research. They are a research council looking at how these elections went, and particularly was it satisfying to the person who is casting the ballot. So I do have a Dr. Roberts with me here to explain those numbers to us. Dr. Roberts, thank you very much for speaking to us on eNCA. Now, you said that over 80% or over 90% of the people who cast their ballots were happy with how the voting went on Monday.
Yes, we interviewed more than 12,000 voters on election day, and generally they were really extremely contented with all aspects of the electoral operation. 95% found the elections free and 94% felt it was fair. And even in terms of the operations at the voting station, the procedures, the electoral staff, more than 80% and often more than 90% expressed confidence in the arrangements and the efficiency of the Electoral Commission.
But your findings also did stipulate something that is concerning in terms of a decline, a seeming decline in the trust of democracy in this country, and that's important.
Yes. At the HSRC, we've been looking at trends in confidence and trust amongst a range of political and social institutions over more than 20 years. What we've seen is, particularly during the 2010s, trust in political institutions has really shown quite a significant decline. The IEC is not immune to that. It has also shown a decline, but it's not as steep as confidence in national government, local government and political parties.
So what do we do then, in terms of people who are losing confidence in political parties actually, giving us the democracy that South Africans were promised?
Well, what we're seeing is obviously disillusionment now remains the main reason for abstention amongst the voting age public. It's not about the operations put in place on election day. It's really about the political system. And as you indicated, it's the public is feeling increasingly marginalised and feeling that democracy is not delivering. So I think it's really a strong appeal for the elected to be held to account. They want accountability, they want responsiveness to their needs, and that really is what we need to see in successive electoral contests in future.
And just very quickly, you did say that this research was actually conducted at 300 polling stations across the country, about 50 at each polling station. Give us a demographic for us to understand exactly who we're talking about. Which areas were these mostly?
So the sample is a random probability. It's designed to be national representative of the voting public. So it's representative at provincial level. So it's a sample province, and also we take into account the demographics of the different voting stations and the registered population across nationally and across the provinces. So it is designed so that it has less than a 1% margin of error in talking about the views of voters on election day.
All right, Dr. Ben Roberts, thank you very much for your time. He is the research director at the HSRC, and they released their findings on a research that they actually conducted, Tilasiso, as you heard, in 300 voting stations just across the country, a random picking. And more than 90% of South Africans felt that the elections this time were free and fair, and they were happy with the IEC officials who assisted them. But what was also confirmed by the HSRC to us is that this time around, Election Day coincided not only with the long weekend, but also the fact that it was also the payday weekend. So, that also can be, the low voter turnout across the country can also be attributed to that.
Yeah, Masego, thank you for that. It's quite interesting, the sampling that the HSRC did and the findings that have come through from those conversations, because, usually it's the conversations that are led by political parties and political leaders. It's their job to politic and to do that, basically blast and lambaste at all cost. But it's the voters' experience that counts as well. That should not be diminished in this conversation. We should hear directly from the voter. The IEC will have its own spin that will say everything was honky-dory, and the political parties will be saying, no, not really. So at the end of the day, I suppose we can really rely on the voice of the voter and their experience. Their problems, as well as where they've had good experiences, all of those should be foregrounded, I believe. All right.